The fog rolled off Puget Sound that October morning like it had something to hide. I stood behind the counter of my bookstore, Pages and Precedents, watching the mist press against the windows while I nursed my third cup of black coffee. 20 years chasing killers through Seattle's rain-slicked alleys, and now I spent my mornings alphabetizing true crime paperbacks and arguing with suppliers about shipping costs. Retirement suited me. That's what I told myself. My phone buzzed against the wooden counter. I glanced at the screen. Anonymous email, no subject line. Probably spam. I almost deleted it, but something made me tap it open. Your wife's college ex, Derek Lang. Suicide in '09. Check witness logs. Her number's buried. Podcast EP 47. Timestamp 2314. Something off. I laughed out loud. Some true crime podcast fanatic had confused my wife's name with something from one of the old cases I'd consulted on. Elena had never been involved in anything more criminal than a parking ticket. I set the phone down and went back to unpacking a shipment of Ann Rule paperbacks. But the itch started. That familiar sensation at the base of my skull that had solved 37 homicides over 2 decades. The itch that told me when something wasn't right. Derek Lang. The name rang a distant bell. Cold case, maybe 2009. Architect or something. Jumped off a bridge in Tacoma during a messy breakup. I'd never worked it directly, but the file had crossed my desk during a departmental review. I left the front counter and walked to the back room where I kept my old case materials. Elena called it my shrine to paranoia. Boxes of files I couldn't bring myself to throw away, organized by year. I found the 2009 box and started flipping. There it was. Derek Lang, age 27, promising architect. Found in the Puyallup River beneath the Murray-Morgan Bridge on November 3, 2009. Ruled suicide after a 2-week investigation. Breakup with fiancé cited as primary stressor. I scanned the witness statements. Standard stuff. Co-workers noting his depression. Friends describing erratic behavior. The fiancé's tearful account of their final argument. Then I saw it. Page 47. Anonymous tip line callback. The caller had provided information about Derek's state of mind in the weeks before his death. The number listed was a landline, 206 area code, Seattle. I knew that number. It had been Elena's apartment line when we were dating. Before we got married. Before she became Elena Harlan. My coffee suddenly tasted like copper. I sat there for a long moment, staring at those 10 digits. There had to be an explanation. Maybe the number had been recycled. Maybe it was a typo. Maybe the fog outside had seeped into my brain and I was seeing patterns that didn't exist. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our shared cloud drive. We'd set it up years ago for tax documents and family photos. Elena rarely used it anymore, but she'd never deleted her old files. I found a folder labeled College Backup, buried 3 levels deep. Inside were hundreds of emails she'd exported from an old account. I shouldn't have opened them. I know that now. But the itch was screaming. The first email from Derek Lang was dated September 2009, 2 months before he died. Elena, I can't stop thinking about you. What we had was real. Sarah doesn't understand me the way you do. We can start over, away from her. There were 17 more, each one more desperate than the last, each one talking about their connection and what they'd shared, and leaving everything behind. My wife had been having an affair with a man who died 16 years ago. I dug deeper, fingers trembling slightly as I scrolled through folder after folder. Bank statements from her old student account. A wire transfer for $5,000 to Derek Lang, dated November 2, 2009. The day before he jumped. The transaction note read, for DL, final. Final what? Final payment? Final goodbye? Then I found the voicemail file. She'd saved it, converted it to an audio file and buried it in a folder called Old Receipts. I pressed play. Derek's voice filled the back room, tinny and desperate. Elena, you have to end it. End it for good, before she finds out about us. I can't take this anymore, the pressure, the lies. Just tell me what you want me to do. Before she finds out about us. Not Sarah, his fiancée at the time. She. I played it again. Then again. Each time, trying to hear something different, some interpretation that made this okay, that made my marriage of 16 years still real. There wasn't one. I sat there in the dim light of my back room, surrounded by the ghosts of cases I'd solved, listening to a dead man plead with my wife. My phone said 11:47 a.m. I'd been digging for nearly 3 hours. Outside, the fog had burned off, leaving Seattle looking almost cheerful. Normal. Like the world hadn't just shifted on its axis. The front door chimed. Elena's voice floated back to me. Alex, you here? I brought lunch. I closed the laptop, walked to the front. She stood there in her counselor's blazer, holding a paper bag from our favorite deli, her smile bright and familiar. The same smile she'd given me every day for 16 years. The same smile that now looked like a mask. Missed you this morning, she said. Derek says hi, by the way. My blood went cold. Derek who? Derek Lang's sister, remember? I mentioned we reconnected on Facebook. She's been going through some stuff with the anniversary coming up. Her smile didn't waver. 16 years of marriage, and I'd never once suspected my wife of deception. I'd interrogated hundreds of liars, murderers who could fake tears on command, con artists who'd sold their own mothers. I'd seen every trick in the book, and I'd missed the one sleeping next to me. Derek Lang, I said slowly, the one who jumped off the bridge in 2009. Something flickered in her eyes. Just for a second. A micro-expression that most people would miss. But I wasn't most people. I'd spent 20 years reading faces, cataloging lies, watching for the moment truth broke through the performance. This was that moment. Then it was gone. That's the one. Tragic story. His sister's still processing it, even after all these years. Were you close? With Derek, I mean. Before he died. She set the lunch bag on the counter. Her hands were steady. Her voice was calm. We had a few classes together. Why? Just curious. I picked up the bag. Thanks for lunch. She kissed my cheek and headed back out. Something about a staff meeting. I watched her car pull away into what remained of the morning fog. Then I went back to the files. I called her that afternoon, told her we needed to talk. She came to the bookstore after her shift, looking concerned but not worried. Not yet. I played the voicemail on speaker without preamble. Derek's voice filled the space between us. Elena, you have to end it. End it for good, before she finds out about us. Her face went white. I'd seen that look on dozens of suspects over the years, the moment they realized the walls were closing in. Where did you get that? Our cloud drive, the one you apparently forgot existed. I pulled up the emails on my laptop. 17 messages, a $5,000 wire transfer the day before he died, and your phone number in a cold case file as an anonymous tip. Alex, that's ancient history. Then why is your number in the witness log? Why did you wire him money the day before he jumped? Why did you never mention any of this in 20 years of marriage? She sat down heavily on the stool behind the counter. It was complicated. Uncomplicated. Derek and we had a thing in college, before I met you. He was engaged to Sarah, but we reconnected and things got messy. The money was a loan for his art show. He was trying to start a side business, photography exhibits. I was just helping a friend. A friend you were sleeping with. It was over by the time he died. I was already seeing you. That's not what these emails suggest. I pulled up the last one, dated November 1st. He's begging you to leave with him, talking about starting over. This wasn't ancient history, Elena. This was active. He was obsessed. I was trying to let him down easy. By sending him $5,000? He was threatening to tell people about us. I just wanted him to go away. I stared at my wife of 16 years, the woman I'd built a life with, the mother of my son. What exactly happened the night before he died, Elena? She met my eyes. Nothing. I wasn't there. Your landline called his dorm that night. I checked the records. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, I called to tell him it was over, that I'd found someone else. You. He didn't take it well. And the next day, he jumped off a bridge. That's not my fault. Maybe not. But lying to cops, giving anonymous tips to throw off the investigation, making yourself a ghost in a dead man's file? I leaned forward. That's something else entirely. She stood up. I'm not doing this. I made mistakes when I was 25. I'm not going to let you interrogate me like one of your suspects. Then go. Stay with your sister. I need space to think. She grabbed her purse, then stopped at the door. Alex, whatever you think you found, it's not what it looks like. That's what they all say. The door chimed as she left. I sat there in the gathering dark, listening to the fog press against the windows, and started making a list. The podcast listener turned out to be a woman named Grace Holloway. She'd been a teaching assistant in Elena's psychology department back in 2009. I reached her through the burner number she'd used for the tip. I saw the Facebook reconnection, she told me over the phone. Elena and Derek's sister. Started digging through old memories and things didn't add up. Elena was at Derek's apartment the night before he died. I saw her leaving around midnight. But her statement says she hadn't seen him in weeks. Why come forward now? Because 15 years ago, I was a scared grad student who didn't want to get involved. Now I'm a tenured professor who can't sleep at night knowing I stayed quiet. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called Mike Reeves, my old partner from homicide. Alex Harlan calling me at 9 p.m. Either someone's dead or you're bored. Neither. I need a favor. Phone records from 2009. Derek Lang case. The bridge jumper? That's been closed for years. I know, but something's off. I just need confirmation on a call log. Mike sighed. This about Elena? I didn't answer. I'll see what I can pull. But Alex, be careful. Sometimes the past should stay buried. That's what I used to tell the families. Turns out it's terrible advice. Jordan found me the next morning, still in the back room, surrounded by files. My son was 14 and had inherited my worst traits. The obsessive attention to detail, the inability to let things go, the conviction that every mystery had a solution if you just looked hard enough. Dad, did you sleep here? I rubbed my eyes. Lost track of time. He peered at the papers spread across my desk. Cold case stuff? Something like that. Mom called. She's staying at Aunt Linda's for a few days. Said you two needed space. He sat down across from me. What's going on? I looked at my son. This kid who wanted to be a detective so badly he kept notebooks full of case files on neighborhood mysteries like who was stealing packages from porches and why Mrs. Patterson's cat kept ending up in the Hendersons' garage. Marriage stuff, I said finally. Complicated grown-up things. That's what you always say when you don't want to tell me something. Because sometimes I don't want to tell you something. He picked up one of the papers, a sketch of the Murray Morgan Bridge I'd printed from Google. This the bridge in Tacoma? The one from that podcast episode? I took the paper back. You listen to true crime podcasts? Everyone does. This is about that architect who jumped, right? Derek Lang? Jordan? I'm not stupid, Dad. You've been weird ever since you got that email. Mom's staying at Aunt Linda's. And now you're digging through a 15-year-old suicide case. He met my eyes with the same steady gaze I used on suspects. What did Mom do? I should have lied, should have protected him from this, but I'd spent 20 years teaching him that the truth matters more than comfort. I don't know yet. That's what I'm trying to figure out. He nodded slowly. Can I help? Absolutely not. Dad, this isn't a game, Jordan. This is real. And whatever I find out, I trailed off. Just let me handle it. Please. He left, but I caught him later that day sketching the bridge in his notebook, adding details from the case file he'd clearly photographed with his phone when I wasn't looking. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, even when the tree wishes it would. I drove to Tacoma that afternoon. 45 minutes through gray drizzle to stand on the Murray-Morgan Bridge and stare down at the Puyallup River. The bridge was older than it looked. Built in 1911, renovated a dozen times since. The kind of structure that held secrets in its rivets and rust, that had witnessed things it would never tell. Derek Lang had been found 200 yards downstream, caught on a debris pile. The coroner estimated he'd hit the water around 2 a.m. No witnesses. No note. Just a broken man and a long fall. I walked the length of the bridge, counting steps. 382 from one end to the other. The railing came up to my chest, high enough to require effort to climb over, but not so high that a determined person couldn't manage it. A jogger passed me, earbuds in, oblivious to the history of the place. I wondered how many people crossed this bridge every day without knowing that lives had ended here, that families had shattered against these cold waters below. The official story was simple. Depression, breakup, impulsive decision. Case closed. But the official story didn't include my wife's phone number in the witness log. Didn't include the $5,000 or the desperate voicemails or the emails begging her to run away with him. I stood there in the mist, trying to imagine what happened that night. Derek, heartbroken and desperate. Elena, trying to end things. A phone call that went wrong. Did she threaten him? Pressure him? Or just deliver the final blow to a man already teetering on the edge? I didn't know, but I was going to find out. An older woman walking her dog stopped near me. Beautiful view, isn't it? Even in the rain. Yeah. I looked down at the water. Beautiful. You lose someone here? I considered the question. I'm starting to think I did. On my way back through Tacoma, I spotted Elena's car in the parking lot of a cafe called Riverside Grounds. She was supposed to be at a counseling seminar in Seattle. I pulled into a spot across the street and watched. 20 minutes later, she emerged with a man I didn't recognize. Tall, sandy hair, maybe mid-40s. They hugged goodbye, longer than acquaintances, shorter than lovers. Then she got in her car and drove away. I snapped photos. Habit. Then I followed her back to Seattle, keeping 3 cars back, using every tail technique I'd learned in 20 years on the force. She didn't go to a seminar. She went to Aunt Linda's house and stayed there. I sat in my car outside, watching the lights come on in the windows, and wondered how many other lies were buried beneath our marriage. Mira Kane had been the best archivist in Seattle PD before she got tired of the bureaucracy and went private. Now she ran a small investigation firm out of a converted warehouse in Ballard, specializing in cold cases and document analysis. Her office looked like a tornado had hit a library. File boxes stacked floor to ceiling, newspapers clipped and pinned to corkboards, 3 monitors running simultaneously on her desk. The organized chaos of someone who saw patterns where others saw mess. Alex Harlan. She looked up from her computer when I walked in. Heard you retired. Heard you did too. Retirement's boring. My husband lasted 6 months before I drove him crazy organizing his sock drawer by fabric weight. He suggested I find something constructive to do with my energy. She gestured to the chaos around her. This is the result. Sounds healthy. It beats alphabetizing my spice rack for the 4th time. What do you need? I laid out everything. The emails, the phone records, the witness log, the $5,000, the locket, the voicemails. Mira listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable, occasionally jotting notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she set down her pen. You want me to dig into your wife? I want you to dig into the Lang case. Whatever you find about Elena is just context. She raised an eyebrow. That's a nice way of putting it. $250 a day plus expenses. I'll need access to everything you found so far, plus written authorization to pull records in your name. Done. You sure about this, Alex? 20 years of marriage is a lot to risk on a hunch. I've seen this kind of thing destroy people, even when they turn out to be right. It stopped being a hunch when I found her phone number in a dead man's file. Mira nodded slowly. I'll start with the sealed exhibits. See if there's anything the original investigators missed. The detective on the Lang case, Harrison, I think, he was good, but he was overworked. Half the suicides that year barely got a second look. You remember the case? I remember all of them. That's my curse. She pulled a file box from a shelf behind her. Give me a week. If there's something there, I'll find it. I left her office feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The sick, twisted kind of hope that comes from knowing you're about to uncover something terrible, and wanting to uncover it anyway. I found something, he said. Jordan, I told you. Mom's locket, the one she keeps in her jewelry box, the one she said was from her grandmother. He held up his phone, showing me a photo. It's engraved, D&E forever. And the date? October 2009. Derek and Elena. A month before he died. My son looked at me with eyes too old for 14. Dad, what did Mom do? I took the phone from him. Stared at the engraving. Felt something crack inside my chest that I'd spent 2 decades building up. I don't know, I said, but I'm going to find out. The first therapy session was Elena's idea. Marriage counseling, she called it when she came back from Linda's 3 days later. We need professional help to work through this. I agreed, but not for the reasons she thought. I wanted to watch her lie to someone who wasn't me. Wanted to see how she handled questions from a neutral party. The therapist was a woman named Dr. Sarah Burke. No relation to Derek's ex-fiancée, just an unfortunate coincidence, with an office in Capitol Hill and a reputation for cutting through denial. So, Dr. Burke said, settling into her chair, tell me why you're here. Elena spoke first. Alex found some old emails from before we were married. He's convinced they mean something they don't. What kind of emails? From a friend, someone I knew in college. He passed away and Alex thinks I was somehow involved. I watched her deliver this sanitized version of events with the same calm confidence she used when presenting to parents at school conferences. Alex, Dr. Burke turned to me. What's your perspective? My wife had an affair with a man who died under suspicious circumstances. She lied to the police about their relationship. She sent him $5,000 the day before he jumped off a bridge. And she's been in contact with his family for months without telling me. Elena's calm cracked. That's not fair. What's not fair is finding out my wife had a secret life I knew nothing about. Dr. Burke held up a hand. Let's slow down. Elena, were you romantically involved with this person? A long pause. Briefly, it was complicated. Were you in a relationship with Alex at the same time? Another pause. There was some overlap. So you were having an affair? Elena's jaw tightened. I was young. I made mistakes. And the police investigation? Did you provide false information? I provided incomplete information. There's a difference. I leaned forward. Actually, under Washington law, there's not much difference at all. Dr. Burke made a note. I think we have a lot to work through here. But I want to establish something first. Alex, what outcome are you hoping for from these sessions? I looked at my wife. The woman I'd loved for 16 years. The mother of my son. The stranger sitting across from me. The truth, I said. For once in our marriage, I want the actual truth. Mira called me the next morning with her first findings. The sealed exhibits from the Lang case? Someone made sure they stayed sealed. There's a notation from the original detective that a witness statement was inconsistent with evidence, but the investigation was closed before it could be followed up. Which witness? Anonymous female caller. Provided detailed information about Lang's state of mind but refused to give her name. The detective noted the call came from a Seattle landline, but the number was partially redacted in the official file. Can you unredact it? Already did. It matches the number you gave me, Elena's old apartment. I sat down heavily. So she didn't just know him. She was actively involved in shaping the investigation. It gets worse. I pulled audio from the evidence locker. The anonymous tip was recorded. Voice analysis isn't admissible in court, but she paused. Alex, it sounds like Elena. Same speech patterns, same verbal tics. She guided the investigation away from herself. That's what it looks like. I hung up and stared at the wall of my back room. My wife hadn't just had an affair. She hadn't just lied to cover it up. She'd actively manipulated a death investigation to protect herself. The question was, protect herself from what? Week 2 brought more revelations. Jordan found Elena's therapy journal while looking for his baseball glove in her office closet. He brought it to me without reading it, a small mercy. But the passages I found inside made my stomach turn. Derek's ghost haunts me. Should I reconnect with his family? Or bury the memories deeper? Alex doesn't suspect anything. After all these years, he still sees me as the person I pretended to be. The guilt comes in waves. Some days I almost forget. Other days I can barely look at my own reflection. I photographed every page, evidence. That's what 20 years of detective work had taught me. Document everything, assume nothing, trust no one. I confronted her that night via text. Washington is a one-party consent state, and I wanted a record. Me. The locket. D&E forever. Derek gave it to you, didn't he? Alina. Where did you find that? Me. Answer the question. Alina. It was a gift, before things got complicated. Me. You told me it was from your grandmother. Another lie to add to the list. Elena. Alex, please. Can we talk about this in person? Me. Not until I have the full picture. Did you tell the police about your relationship with Derek? Elena. I gave them what they needed. Me. Did you commit perjury? Elena. I forgot some details. It was 15 years ago. Me. You forgot a man you were sleeping with? A man you sent $5,000 to the day before he died? A man whose family you've been secretly meeting with for months? She didn't respond. I waited an hour, then sent one more message. Me. I'm going to find out what really happened that night, Elena. With or without your cooperation. Her response came 20 minutes later. Elena. You're going to destroy our family over something that happened before we even got married. Me. No, you already did that. I'm just uncovering the wreckage. Month 2 brought the deep dive. Mira filed FOIA requests for the bridge surveillance footage. Washington's Public Records Act gave them 5 days to respond. In the meantime, I kept attending therapy sessions, kept taking notes, kept watching my wife squirm under questions she couldn't answer honestly. Why do you think you didn't tell Alex about Derek sooner? Dr. Burke asked during our 4th session. Because it was in the past. Because I didn't want to dredge up painful memories. Or because you were afraid of what he might find if he started looking. Elena's composure slipped. What's that supposed to mean? You're a counselor, Elena. You know how secrets work. The longer we keep them, the heavier they become. And sometimes the weight of carrying them is worse than the consequences of letting them go. I watched my wife struggle with this, watched her calculate how much to reveal, how much to keep hidden. I made mistakes, she said finally. I'm not proud of them, but I didn't do anything criminal. Alex seems to think otherwise. Alex is a detective. He sees crimes everywhere. Dr. Burke turned to me. What do you think, Alex? I think my wife is very good at telling people what they want to hear. I think she's spent 15 years convincing herself that what she did wasn't that bad. And I think she's terrified of what happens when the truth finally comes out. Elena's eyes flashed. The truth is that I had an affair when I was 25. That's it. Everything else is paranoid speculation. Then why did you lie to the police? I didn't. Why did you give them false information about when you last saw Derek? I was confused. Why did you send him $5,000 the day before he died? It was a loan. Why did you tell me the locket was from your grandmother when it was clearly a gift from your lover? She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. I'm not doing this. I came here to save our marriage, not to be interrogated. Our marriage died the moment I found your name in that case file. I just didn't know it yet. She grabbed her purse and walked out. Dr. Burke made a note. Alex, she said gently, what are you really looking for here? I stared at the empty chair where my wife had been sitting. Justice. For Derek. For his family. For myself. And if you don't find it, then I'll know I tried. The CCTV footage arrived on day 5, just under the deadline. Grainy, black and white, 15 years degraded. But clear enough. The timestamp showed 1:47 a.m. on November 3, 2009. A figure approached the railing of the Murray Morgan Bridge. Male, based on the build. He stood there for several minutes, looking down at the water. Then a second figure appeared. Female, based on the silhouette. Wearing a coat that looked familiar. The two figures talked. The footage had no audio, but their body language told a story. His desperate gestures, her rigid posture, the way she kept backing away while he kept advancing. At 1:52 a.m., she turned and walked away. At 1:53 a.m., he climbed over the railing. At 1:54 a.m., he was gone. I watched that footage 17 times, studied every frame. The woman's coat matched one Elena had worn in photos from that period. The height was right. The build was right. I couldn't prove it was her. But I couldn't prove it wasn't either. I tailed Elena to a Tacoma cafe the following week. She met with Derek's old roommate, a guy named Marcus Webb, who'd given a statement to police back in 2009. I watched them through the window from my car. They talked for over an hour. Elena did most of the talking, animated, gesturing, occasionally wiping her eyes. Marcus listened, nodded, said little. The body language of two people sharing a secret. When she finally left, I waited 10 minutes, then walked in. Marcus was still at the same table, staring into an empty coffee cup like it held answers. He was thinner than his old photos suggested. 15 years of whatever he'd been carrying had worn him down. Mr. Webb? I'm Alex Harlan. I'm looking into Derek Lang's death. He looked up from his coffee with wary eyes. You a cop? Retired. Derek's case has always bothered me. Join the club. He studied my face for a moment, something shifting behind his eyes. You're her husband, aren't you? Elena's husband. No point in lying. Yeah. She know you're here? No. And I'd appreciate if you didn't mention it. He laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Man, you married that woman without knowing what you were getting into, didn't you? I sat down across from him without waiting for an invitation. That's what I'm trying to figure out. What do you know about their relationship, Elena and Derek? Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. I know it was intense, like scary intense. Derek was engaged to Sarah, had been for 2 years, everything planned out. Career, wedding, the whole nine. Then Elena showed up in his life again and everything went sideways. Again? They dated freshman year, briefly. I always got the impression she was the one who got away, you know? The girl he compared everyone else to. He shook his head. When they reconnected senior year, it was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. Derek couldn't see anything but her. Couldn't think about anything but her. What about Elena? How did she feel about him? That's the thing. I could never figure it out. One day she'd be all over him, talking about running away together, starting fresh somewhere nobody knew them. The next day she'd act like he didn't exist. Hot and cold. Push and pull. It was messing with his head. The money, I said. $5,000 the day before he died. What was that about? Marcus's expression darkened. Derek told me it was hush money. His words. Said Elena was trying to buy his silence about something. Silence about what? About them? About the affair. She'd started seeing some other guy, a cop, I think, and she was terrified Derek would tell him everything. She offered Derek money to disappear, to move away and never contact her again. A cop. That would have been me. We'd been dating for 3 months by then. But Derek didn't take the money and disappear. No, he took the money and doubled down. Said if she was willing to pay that much to keep him quiet, it proved she still cared. He started pushing harder, calling her constantly, showing up places she'd be. It was... Marcus trailed off. It was what? It was obsessive. I tried to talk to him about it, told him he needed help. He just looked at me and said, "You don't understand. She's the only thing that matters. Without her, there's no point." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. What happened the night before he died? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. She came to our apartment. Late, like after midnight. I heard them arguing through the walls. She was screaming at him to end it and make it go away. He was crying. Actually crying like a broken child. And then she left. I heard the door slam. I thought about going to check on him, but he looked away. I didn't. I told myself he just needed to sleep it off. By morning, everything would be fine. But it wasn't. No, by morning, he was dead. I sat with that for a moment. The weight of it. You think she pushed him? Metaphorically, I mean. Marcus met my eyes. I think she pushed him to the edge, and then she walked away. Whether that makes her responsible, he shrugged. That's above my pay grade. But I know one thing. Your wife isn't who she pretends to be. Whatever face she shows you, it's not the real one. I thanked him and left. Drove back to Seattle with his words echoing in my head. End it. Make it go away. What exactly had my wife asked Derek to end? Month 3 brought the turning point. Mira tracked down Elena's college mentor, a professor named Dr. Patricia Reeves, no relation to my old partner, who'd provided alibis for Elena's visits to campus during the investigation. She asked me to cover for her, Dr. Reeves admitted when Mira confronted her. Said it was just about protecting her reputation. I believed her. And now? Now I think I helped cover up something much worse. Mira sent me the transcript of their conversation along with a note. The professor is willing to testify if this goes anywhere. She feels guilty about her part in it. I had the voicemails. I had the emails. I had the bank records. I had the CCTV footage. I had witness statements from Marcus Webb and Dr. Reeves. I had 15 years of lies documented and cataloged. But I still didn't have the truth about what happened on that bridge. I called my old partner. Mike, I need a favor. A big one. Bigger than the phone records? I need to reopen the Lang case. Silence on the line. Then, Alex, that case has been closed for 15 years. You'd need new evidence, a compelling reason, and a prosecutor willing to take it on. I have new evidence. I have a witness willing to testify that Elena Harlan, my wife, provided false statements to the original investigation. I have CCTV footage showing a woman matching her description on the bridge minutes before Derek Lang jumped. That's not proof she did anything wrong. No, but it's enough to ask questions. And I have a feeling that once people start asking questions, the whole thing unravels. Mike sighed. You know what this means for your family, right? For Jordan? I know. But if I don't do this, I'm no better than the people I spent 20 years putting away. The ones who thought they could bury the truth and walk away clean. Another long silence. Then, I'll make some calls, no promises. That's all I'm asking. The subpoena came 2 weeks later. Pierce County Cold Case Unit, requesting Elena's appearance for a witness clarification interview regarding the Derek Lang investigation. She found out before I could tell her. Someone at her school had seen the news coverage of the case being reopened and connected the dots. She came to the bookstore that night, eyes blazing. You did this. You went to the police. I provided them with evidence. What they do with it is their decision. Evidence of what? An affair that happened 15 years ago? Evidence of perjury. Evidence of witness tampering. Evidence that you were on that bridge the night Derek died and never told anyone. Her face went pale. How did you... Security footage, Elena. You were there. You talked to him. And then you walked away and let him jump. That's not what happened. Then tell me what did happen. Tell me why you were on that bridge at 2 a.m. Tell me what you said to him. Tell me why you've been lying about it for 15 years. She sank into a chair, all the fight draining out of her. You wouldn't understand. Try me. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, quietly, Derek was going to tell Sarah about us. About everything. The affair, the money, all of it. He'd decided that if he couldn't have me, he was going to burn everything down. So you went to stop him. I went to talk sense into him, to make him see that confessing wouldn't change anything. It would just hurt more people. And he said he didn't care. Said if he couldn't have me, he didn't want to live. I told him he was being dramatic, that he'd get over it, that he had his whole life ahead of him. Then what? Then I left. I walked away because I was tired of his threats and his drama and his constant neediness. I got in my car and drove back to Seattle and tried to forget any of it happened. But he didn't forget. No. Her voice broke. He didn't forget. And you've been carrying that guilt ever since. She looked up at me with tears streaming down her face. I didn't kill him, Alex. I didn't push him. I didn't even touch him. I walked away. And he made his choice. But you lied to the police about being there. Because I knew how it would look. Because I knew everyone would blame me. Because I was scared and young and stupid and I didn't know what else to do. I stared at my wife. This woman I'd shared a bed with for 16 years. This woman who'd borne my son. This woman who'd smiled at me every morning over coffee and never once let slip the weight she was carrying. I believe you, I said finally. I believe you didn't push him, but you still lied. You still manipulated the investigation. You still let his family spend 15 years thinking their son's death was a simple suicide when you knew there was more to it. I know. She wiped her eyes. So what happens now? Now you tell the truth. To the police, to Derek's family, to everyone you've been lying to. And then? I looked away. And then we'll see. The hearing was scheduled for month 5. By then, Elena had moved out, took a temporary apartment in Tacoma, ironically enough, close to the bridge where it all began. I drove past her building once. Just once. A gray 3-story walk-up with a view of the industrial waterfront. The kind of place people ended up when their lives had collapsed and they were trying to rebuild from scratch. Part of me wanted to feel satisfied, vindicated, The detective who'd finally solved the case that mattered most. But mostly, I just felt tired. Jordan took it hard. He'd figured out most of what happened on his own, piecing together clues from my files and his own observations. When I finally told him the full truth, he just nodded. "I kinda knew," he said. "Not the details, but I knew something was wrong. With Mom. With you guys. I could feel it in the house, like a pressure that never let up. I'm sorry you had to go through this. Don't be. You always told me that the truth matters more than comfort. You were just proving it." He paused. "The hard way. I would have protected you from this if I could." "I know. But some things you can't protect people from. You taught me that too." He threw himself into his forensics club work after that. Started a project on unresolved questions, how to investigate cases where the official story didn't match the evidence. His teacher called me to say it was the best work any student had ever done. "Your son has a gift," she told me. "The way he sees patterns, connects dots that other people miss. You must be very proud." I am, and terrified. Why terrified? Because I know where that gift leads, and it's not always to happy places. Like I said, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The Pierce County Courthouse smelled like old paper and desperation. I'd spent countless hours in places like this during my career, watching defendants squirm and witnesses crack under pressure. Never thought I'd be watching my own wife, Elena's lawyer, a sharp woman named Teresa Vance, who specialized in reputation management cases, which was a fancy way of saying clients who'd been caught doing something they shouldn't, had tried to get the hearing postponed. Medical reasons, scheduling conflicts, inadequate time to review evidence. The judge denied every motion. "Your client has had 15 years to prepare for this conversation," he said. "I think that's sufficient." The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically. Phone records showing Elena's calls to Derek in the weeks before his death. Bank records documenting the $5,000 wire transfer. The CCTV footage from the bridge. Witness statements from Grace Holloway, Marcus Webb, and Dr. Patricia Reeves. And then there were the voicemails. Derek's desperate voice filled the courtroom, tinny and haunting from the old recording. "Elena, you have to end it. End it for good, before she finds out about us." Elena sat motionless in the witness chair. I watched her face as the recording played, looking for guilt, for remorse, for some sign that she understood what she'd done. I saw nothing, just a mask, carefully composed. "Mrs. Harlan," the prosecutor said, "would you describe your relationship with Derek Lang in the months before his death?" "We were friends, former classmates who had reconnected." "Just friends?" "At one point we had been more than friends, but that was in the past. The emails we've entered into evidence suggest otherwise. Would you like me to read some passages?" Elena's lawyer objected. Overruled. The prosecutor read 3 emails. Derek's words about running away together, his declarations of love, his desperation to be with her. "Do these sound like emails from just a friend, Mrs. Harlan?" Derek had confused feelings. I was trying to help him work through them. By accepting $5,000 from him the day before he died? That was a loan, for a business venture. A loan you never disclosed to the police during their investigation. A loan you never mentioned to your husband during 16 years of marriage. The prosecutor paused. A loan you apparently forgot ever existed until it was discovered in bank records. Elena's composure cracked. Just slightly. A tightening around the eyes, a tension in the jaw. I made mistakes. I was young and scared, and I didn't know how to handle the situation. Which situation, Mrs. Harlan? The affair? The money? Or the fact that a man you were involved with jumped off a bridge hours after you spoke with him? Objection. Withdrawn. The prosecutor turned to the evidence board. Let's talk about the night of November 2nd, 2009. Where were you between midnight and 3 a.m.? At home, asleep. Your phone records show a call to Derek Lang's dorm at 11:47 p.m., lasting 43 minutes. We talked on the phone. That's not a crime. No. But your original statement to police said you hadn't spoken to Derek Lang in several weeks before his death. That was a lie, wasn't it? Elena didn't answer. Mrs. Harlan, I forgot about the call. You forgot about a 43-minute conversation with a man who died hours later? It was 15 years ago. Let me show you Exhibit 14. The prosecutor pulled up the CCTV footage. This was recorded at the Murray Morgan Bridge at 1:47 a.m. on November 3rd, 2009. Do you recognize the female figure approaching the railing? Elena stared at the screen. At her own silhouette, frozen in grainy black and white. I can't tell who that is. Really? Because we've had experts analyze the footage. The height, the build, the distinctive coat, all consistent with your description at the time. He paused. You were there, Mrs. Harlan, on that bridge, minutes before Derek Lang jumped. That proves nothing. It proves you lied to the police. It proves you've been lying for 15 years. And it proves that whatever happened on that bridge, you've been carrying it alone all this time. Elena's lawyer called for a recess. The judge granted 20 minutes. I sat in the gallery, watching my wife's world collapse, and felt nothing but a hollow sense of completion. Justice. Such a cold word for such a hot mess. Dr. Reeves testified about providing false alibis. Marcus Webb testified about the argument he'd overheard the night before Derek's death. Derek's sister, the woman who'd sent me the original tip, testified about her family's 15 years of unanswered questions. And then the CCTV footage was played. Elena sat in the witness chair and watched herself walk away from a man about to die. Watched the moment she'd been running from for a decade and a half play out in grainy black and white. When the prosecutor asked her to explain what happened that night, she didn't lie. Couldn't lie. Not anymore. She told the truth about the affair, about the money, about the desperate phone calls and the late-night confrontation on the bridge. I thought he was bluffing, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He'd threatened before and never followed through. I didn't think he'd actually do it. But he did. Yes, he did. The judge found sufficient grounds to reopen the investigation. Elena was charged with making false statements to law enforcement, a misdemeanor under Washington law, but enough to end her career. Her lawyer negotiated a plea: community service, probation, mandatory counseling. No jail time. The prosecutor told me afterward that without a body, without physical evidence, without proof that she'd done anything more than lie and manipulate, criminal charges for Derek's death would never stick. She walked him to the edge, he said, but she didn't push him over. And under the law, that's a distinction that matters. I understood. I didn't like it, but I understood. The school fired her the next week. Breach of trust, they called it in the official statement. Ironic, coming from an institution that employed her to counsel troubled students to help them navigate their darkest moments. The local news picked up the story. School counselor implicated in cold case deception. Her photo appeared on 3 channels. Her professional reputation, everything she'd spent 15 years building, crumbled overnight. The divorce followed quickly after that. My lawyer, a guy named Tony Bianchi, who'd handled a dozen cop divorces and knew exactly where the bodies were buried, laid out the case with clinical efficiency. Fraudulent concealment of material facts during the marriage, perjury in connection with a death investigation, ongoing deception about contact with the deceased's family. He flipped through his notes. Under Washington's equitable distribution laws, the court has wide discretion when one party has engaged in misconduct. We can make a strong case for primary custody and a majority share of marital assets. I don't care about the money. You should. Jordan's going to need college funding, and your wife, ex-wife, isn't going to be in any position to contribute. I signed the papers and let Tony do his work. Elena didn't contest anything. Not the house, not custody, not the division of assets. She'd spent 15 years building a life on lies, and now she had nothing left to fight for. The final hearing was brief. Both lawyers made their statements. The judge reviewed the evidence. And then, with a bang of his gavel, 16 years of marriage became a line item in the King County Public Records database. Elena looked at me once as she left the courtroom. I expected anger or hatred, or at least resentment. Instead, I saw something that might have been relief. The weight of 15 years of secrets finally lifted. I didn't know what to do with that. Jordan chose to stay with me. He was 15 by then, old enough under Washington law to express a preference, and the guardian ad litem agreed that stability mattered more than maintaining the illusion of a unified family. I still love Mom, he told me the night the custody agreement was finalized. We were sitting on the porch of the house that was now mine alone, watching the lights come on across the neighborhood. But I can't trust her. And you always said trust is the foundation of everything. I did say that. Was that true, or just something you told me because it sounded good? I thought about it. Both, probably, but mostly true. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Good enough for me. The final twist came 6 months after the divorce was finalized. Derek's sister reached out to thank me. Said the reopened investigation had finally given her family some closure. Not the answers they wanted, but at least the truth. I found something in Derek's storage unit, she told me. Papers he'd saved from that time, including a letter he wrote the night before he died. She sent me a copy. I read it alone in my back room, surrounded by the case files that had consumed my life for almost a year. To whoever finds this, I'm not writing to explain or excuse what I'm about to do. I just want someone to know the truth. Elena Harlan is not responsible for my death. She may have broken my heart, but the choice to end my life is mine alone. Don't blame her. Don't punish her. Just let me go. I loved her. That was my mistake. But it was my mistake, not hers. Derek. I read that letter 3 times. Then I called Elena. You should see this, I said. Derek left a note. He specifically said you weren't responsible. Silence on the line. Then, does that change anything? Not legally. You still lied to the police. You still let his family suffer without answers for 15 years. But I thought you should know. He didn't blame you. Whatever guilt you've been carrying, maybe it's time to let some of it go. She didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, quietly, thank you, Alex, for telling me. Don't mention it. I hung up and stared at the letter in my hands. The truth is never simple, never clean. It's messy and complicated and full of contradictions, and sometimes knowing it doesn't make anything better. But it's still the truth. And that has to count for something. I met Lena Grant at a mystery book club for retirees. She was a librarian, divorced, with 2 grown kids and a passion for unsolved cases that matched my own. Our first real conversation was about a cold case from the 1970s. A Seattle woman who'd vanished without a trace, her disappearance never solved. Lena had researched it for years, built a timeline, developed theories. You ever think about what makes someone disappear? She asked me over coffee after one of our meetings. Professionally, about 30% of the time it's voluntary. They want to start over, leave their old life behind. Another 30%, it's someone they know, spouse, lover, family member. The rest? I shrugged. Bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. That's the detective talking. What about the human? I thought about Elena, about the life she'd built on lies, the person she'd pretended to be for 15 years, the version of herself she'd erased to become my wife. I think we all disappear a little bit every day. The person we were yesterday isn't quite the person we are today. We change, we grow, we hide the parts of ourselves we're not proud of. Sometimes the hiding becomes so complete that we forget there was ever anything to hide. Lena nodded slowly. And what brings us back? Truth. Someone who sees through the hiding and demands to see who we really are. Even if it hurts? Especially if it hurts. The pain means it matters. She smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. You're not what I expected, Alex Harlan. What did you expect? I don't know. A grizzled detective with a drinking problem and an ex-wife he can't stop talking about? No drinking problem. And my ex-wife is definitely off the conversational menu. Good. She raised her coffee cup. To fresh starts. To fresh starts. The bookstore flourished in the months that followed. I started hosting true crime reading nights, bringing in local authors and retired detectives to discuss their cases. Jordan helped run the events, setting up chairs and managing the guest list with the efficiency of someone who'd been planning his career since middle age. Derek's sister came to one of the events. She'd started an advocacy group for families of suicide victims, pushing for better investigation protocols and more thorough record-keeping. I donated a portion of the event proceeds to her cause. Thank you, she said afterward, for everything you did, for not letting it stay buried. I didn't do it for you. I did it for myself. I know, but it helped us anyway. Sometimes that's how justice works. People pursuing their own answers end up finding answers for others. I thought about that for a long time after she left. Eleanor reached out once more, about 8 months after everything settled. Jordan had just turned 16, and she wanted to know if she could take him to dinner for his birthday. I said yes. He was her son, too, whatever else she'd done. He came back from that dinner quiet and thoughtful. I didn't ask what they talked about. That was between them. But he seemed lighter, somehow. Like he'd put down a weight he'd been carrying. She's different, he told me later. Sadder, I guess. But more honest. Like she's finally stopped pretending. That's what happens when the lies run out. Do you hate her? I considered the question carefully. No, I did, for a while. But hate takes energy, and I'd rather spend that energy on things that matter. Like the bookstore? Like the bookstore, like you. Like building something new instead of burning down something old. He nodded. That's good advice. Don't sound so surprised. I'm occasionally wise. He laughed, really laughed. And for a moment, everything felt almost normal. I married Lena in a small ceremony the following spring. Jordan was my best man. A handful of friends from the bookstore and her library colleagues filled the seats. No church, no religious officiant, just a judge and some heartfelt vows in a garden overlooking Puget Sound. I promise to tell you the truth, I said, holding her hands in mine, even when it's hard, even when it hurts. I promise to see you, really see you, for who you are, not who I want you to be. And I promise to keep searching, keep asking questions, keep digging for answers, but to come home to you at the end of every day. She smiled through her tears. That's a very detective proposal. You knew what you were getting into. I did, and I wouldn't have it any other way. We exchanged rings, simple bands engraved with the word unvanished, and sealed our vows with a kiss. Jordan stood nearby, notebook in hand as always. Later, I'd find out he'd been sketching the ceremony, capturing the moment in the same meticulous detail he brought to his case files. Dad, he said as the reception wound down, can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it? Any of it? I looked out at the water, at the sun setting over the city I'd spent my life trying to understand. I regret the years I spent not knowing the truth. I regret what it did to you, what my obsession with answers put you through. But the investigation itself? Finding out what really happened? No, I don't regret that. Why not? Because the truth is all we have, Jordan. Everything else, the stories we tell ourselves, the lies we believe, the comfortable illusions we build our lives around, it all falls apart eventually. But the truth endures. It's the foundation everything else gets built on. Even when it hurts? Even when it hurts. He thought about that for a moment. Then he nodded, added something to his notebook, and wandered off to find more cake. I watched him go. My son, this kid who'd inherited my worst traits and somehow turned them into something better. Then I went to find my wife. The call came 3 months later. A publisher had gotten wind of my investigation. Some journalist who'd covered the reopening of the Lang case had written an article that went viral, and they wanted to know if I'd be interested in writing a book. A memoir, the editor explained. Your perspective on the case, how you found the truth, what it cost you, what you learned. I thought about Elena, about Jordan, about all the messy, complicated, painful details that had led me from that foggy October morning to where I stood now. I'll think about it, I said. I thought about it for 2 weeks. Then I sat down at my computer and started writing. The book came out the following fall. Buried Lines. A Detective's Reckoning with Truth and Betrayal. Not my title. The publisher insisted on something dramatic, but the words inside were all mine. It sold well. Better than expected. The podcast that had started everything did a follow-up episode, and suddenly everyone wanted to know about the retired detective who'd uncovered his own wife's 15-year deception. I did a few interviews, talked about the importance of following evidence wherever it leads, talked about the cost of secrets, the weight of lies, the freedom that comes from finally facing the truth. I didn't talk about Elena. That was her story to tell if she ever chose to tell it. Derek's sister reached out after the book came out, said she'd read it 3 times, said it had helped her understand what her brother might have been going through in those final days. He wasn't weak, I told her. He was overwhelmed. There's a difference. I know that now. Thank you for helping me see it. Last month, Jordan got accepted to the Forensic Science program at the University of Washington. Full scholarship, top of his class. He starts in the fall. You're going to be a better investigator than I ever was, I told him. I had a good teacher. You had a stubborn one. That's not the same thing, he grinned. Close enough. I still run the bookstore, still host the true crime nights, still spend my mornings stacking paperbacks and arguing with suppliers about shipping costs. But now, when the fog rolls off Puget Sound and presses against the windows, I don't think about the cases I didn't solve, the ones that got away, the ghosts that haunted me. I think about the truth, the weight of it, the cost of it, the freedom that comes from finally, letting it out into the light. And I think about what I'd tell anyone else walking this road. Anyone who's just discovered that the person they love isn't who they thought they were. The truth hurts. There's no way around that. But lies fester. They grow and spread and infect everything they touch. They turn into secrets, and secrets turn into walls, and walls turn into prisons. The truth sets you free. Even when it burns. Even when it breaks. Even when it tears apart everything you thought you knew and leaves you standing in the wreckage, wondering how you missed the signs. It sets you free. That's not philosophy. That's not wisdom. It's just the way it works. And I should know. I'm a detective. Or I was. And the most important case I ever solved was my own.